The river was warm. Not the gentle warmth of shallow water under morning sun, not the steaming heat that sometimes rose from volcanic springs far to the south, but a heavy, breathless warmth, like the river was holding fever inside its depths. A large crocodile named Haru floated near the surface, only his eyes and nostrils exposed. He had lived in this bend of the river his entire life. He knew its moods, its rhythms, the soft tug of its current, the way the water pushed against his scales. But today the river felt wrong. It didn't push him at all. Haru drifted, waiting for the usual slow pull downstream. Nothing. The water lay flat, unmoving, as still as a pond before dawn. But this was a river. It should always move. Even in the driest season, even in the hottest drought, the current never fully stopped. Yet today, Haru floated as though suspended in thick oil. He moved his tail. The water resisted too slowly, almost reluctantly. Haru sank deeper, testing the depth. Warmth enveloped him, not pleasant, not natural. Heat radiated upward from below like the belly of the river hid embers. He rose again, nostrils breaking the surface. Nothing stirred. No ripples drifted outward. His body made a disturbance, but the water swallowed it instantly, refusing to carry it anywhere. Haru blinked. He spotted a heron on the far bank. It stood stiffly, legs deep in the shallows. Normally herons twitched constantly, shifting weight, peering for fish. This one stood frozen, staring into the still water as though expecting it to move first. Fish should have darted beneath the surface, but Haru saw none. No shadows, no quick flashes of silver scales. Only the faint shapes of dead leaves suspended in the water, not sinking, not rising, as though trapped in a thick gel. Haru's tail flicked again. Still nothing. The river didn't respond. Haru felt unease prickling beneath his armoured hide. It wasn't the silence, it wasn't the heat, it wasn't even the stillness. It was the sense that the river wanted to move, but something was holding it still. A faint vibration brushed Haru's jaw. He stilled instantly. Not thunder, not boat engines, not hippos. This vibration came from the riverbed itself, a soft, continuous hum. He sank lower, sliding beneath the surface. His ears closed, his eyes dimmed under the water's blur, but he listened with his bones. The hum deepened. Heat radiated stronger, pulsing. Slow. Rhythmic. Almost like a heartbeat. Haru jerked upward, breaking the surface. Instinct screamed in him, move. But the river held him as if grasping his body in thick hands. A sudden splash made him twist his head. Not a predator, not prey, a boat. 3 humans in orange vests glided toward the center of the river, their outboard engine idling. But the idling made no wake. No ripples spread. The boat simply hovered atop the still water. One human leaned over the side, lowering a sensor into the warm depths. Another adjusted dials on a bright metal case. The third kept staring upstream with a worried expression. Haru watched them. He knew their kind. They placed pipes, drilled, tested, dumped things. Sometimes they scared fish away. Sometimes they brought strange scents into the river that burned Haru's nostrils. But today they looked afraid. Not of animals, but of the river itself. One of them tapped a gauge. Shook it. Tapped again. Whatever it showed frightened him. Haru could smell it in his sweat. The hum from below intensified. Haru felt it through his entire body. The riverbed shifted slightly, a subtle lift, then release. Haru's tail brushed what should have been silt but felt instead like firm, smooth stone. The river bottom was changing. The heron on the bank stepped back, wings half open. Its reflection on the water trembled unnaturally, not from ripples, but from vibrations rising through the river itself. A turtle surfaced near Haru, an old male he'd known for years. It opened its beak weakly, bubbles rising so slowly they seemed stuck halfway. Then the turtle drifted sideways, carried by no current, as though fainting in warm, suffocating water. Haru snapped his jaws, a warning reflex. No sound echoed. The river swallowed even that. A loud human shout cut across the water, but strangely flat, muffled, trapped. Haru saw the reason. A patch of river near the humans. Rose. Not splashing, not boiling. Rising. A bulge of water lifted upward, as if something beneath pushed against the surface. But instead of spilling outward, the water held its shape, a trembling dome shimmering with heat. The humans backed their boat away. One fell into the water. He thrashed, but the water swallowed his splashes, producing no sound, no waves. His colleague reached down and hauled him back aboard, panic etched across his face. The dome burst inward. Not outward, inward. A sucking motion pulled the surrounding water into the depression, forming a swirling funnel. But the funnel didn't spin naturally. It rotated slowly, thickly, like syrup caught in a hesitant drain. Haru felt the pull, weak at first, then stronger. The river began to move again, but only toward the depression, not downstream, not upstream, just inward. The heron flapped desperately, taking off clumsily, barely clearing the collapsing water. Its wings beat violently, feathers shaking heat-distorted air. It rose into the sky and disappeared into the canopy of riverbank trees. Other animals weren't so lucky. Fish surfaced, not jumping, but floating, pushed upward by hot, rising currents. They flailed briefly, then stilled, their gills flapping uselessly. Haru twisted his body, using his powerful tail to push away from the sinking zone. The water resisted slower than it should have, but he forced his way toward the reeds near the bank. The human's boat lurched sideways. One of them yelled into a radio, waving frantically at a larger vessel anchored farther downstream. But the larger vessel began drifting toward the depression too, completely on its own. The river was pulling everything inward. Haru reached a patch of reeds. The stalks trembled, bending toward the center of the river as if caught in invisible hands. Heat shimmered on the water's surface, turning the world into rippling distortions. Then the riverbed pulsed again, this time violently. Haru felt the shock through his ribs. The water around him lifted, a vertical column rising straight up before collapsing back down without a splash. The hum became a roar, not audible, felt. The depression widened, the pull intensified, the current returned, but the river no longer flowed, it consumed. Haru threw his weight sideways, dragging half his body onto the muddy bank. The mud steamed. Steam rose in thin, wavering plumes, carrying the smell of minerals long buried. Haru scrambled further up, claws digging into the riverbank soil. Behind him, the river thrashed, silently, violently, like a living creature fighting its own skin. The human's boat was sucked into the funnel. Haru saw one of them leap into the water, paddling desperately toward the opposite bank. The funnel collapsed inward halfway, pulling the boat under. Wood splintered. Metal disappeared below. Haru blinked once, twice, stunned. The river wasn't warm, it was heating. From below, the current wasn't gone. It was reversing, and whatever had begun to rise beneath the riverbed, it was pushing the water aside to make room. Haru backed farther from the bank, the steaming mud burning the underside of his feet. The river behind him pulsed once more, and the warm water stopped moving again. Completely. Haru stared, unblinking, heart pounding, nostrils flaring. Something beneath the river had taken the current for itself, and now it wanted the river. Haru dragged himself farther up the muddy bank, steam curling around his belly as the soil hissed beneath his scales. The heat had grown intense enough that even a crocodile, built for the rhythm of sun-baked riverbeds, felt it as a threat. He lifted his head and looked back at the unmoving water. It was too still, not the peace of a sunrise lagoon, not the sleep of a drought basin, but a forced stillness, thick and airless, as if the river's skin had tightened into one solid, trembling mass. Fish bodies drifted near the surface, suspended in place. A drowned reed lay sideways, half submerged, caught in the silent viscosity, not rising, not sinking, just stuck in the warm, heavy water as though trapped inside the river's breath. Haru's nostrils flared. The smell had changed, no longer just heat and minerals. Now the scent of river mud, deep river mud, rose upward, curling around him like the breath of something ancient exhaling after centuries of burial. A smell thick with decay and something harsher, sharper, like hot stones scraped open. Haru looked downstream. The larger research vessel, white hull, rows of blinking lights, was no longer held by its anchor. It drifted slowly, irresistibly, toward the center of the river. Its floodlamps cut long yellow slashes across the still surface, revealing swirls of suspended silt that moved too slowly to be natural. The river wasn't merely warm anymore, it was thickening. One of the humans on the riverbank shouted, pointing at the spreading steam. Another dragged a crate of instruments away from the shore, boots squelching silently in hot mud. A third held a radio, speaking in urgent bursts. Haru saw fear on their faces, the kind of fear that came when humans realized they had caused something they didn't understand. Then the water moved. Not the current, the whole river. A vertical ripple passed through it, like a shiver travelling through a giant animal's hide. The surface lifted and fell in one smooth wave, travelling from the southern bend toward the human's boat. Not a splash, not a slosh. A controlled, deliberate undulation. Haru froze, eyes wide. Another ripple followed, then another, slower, stronger. The boat rocked gently, then violently. Its metal hull groaned under the pressure. The riverbed pulsed upward again. A deep thrum rattled the bottom of Haru's jaw. The mud under him vibrated. The reeds shook violently, bowing toward the water. Even trees along the shore bent slightly inward, as though drawn toward the river's center. The water bulged once more, then again, higher, harder. A dome rose, smoother than the first, a perfect hemisphere of distorted reflections. The humans scrambled back. One fell on the bank, hands sinking into hot mud. Another reached for him, pulling him to his feet as the dome expanded another meter. Haru's heartbeat quickened. The dome did not burst. This one held shape. The heat radiating from it prickled his nostrils. Haru watched a fish bump against the rising water surface, not thrashing, simply pushed upward as the bulge lifted it like debris on rising dough. Then the dome flattened suddenly, not inward, not outward, but down. The water depressed sharply, forming a massive circular basin in the middle of the river. Everything around it, boats, reeds, debris, dead fish, tilted toward the drop. The riverbed shook. A groan rose from beneath the surface, a resonance, not sound, but pressure, that rattled Haru's skull. The basin deepened, and then, at its center, the river split. A long crack tore open the water surface as though the river was a sheet of brittle glass. It didn't behave like liquid. It parted in clean, sharp lines, revealing darkness below. Darkness lit intermittently by faint, flickering orange. Haru's eyes widened, light from beneath the river. Heat surged upward, forming a shimmering column. Steam burst in short, violent puffs before being sucked downward again, consumed by the same force that had devoured sound earlier. The humans screamed, but their voices sounded thin, swallowed instantly by the pressure. One of them yelled toward the large vessel. "It's venting from below! Pull out! Pull out!" But the vessel did not move. Its engines roared. Haru saw vibration in the air where the sound should have been, but the thick river water clung to its hull like glue, preventing it from shifting even a meter. The crack widened. A gout of boiling mud burst upward, splashing in heavy clumps across the surface. Instead of dispersing, the mud rolled back toward the opening like weight falling through water. Haru felt the pull again. Stronger, much stronger. He dug his claws into the bank, dragging himself further away. Behind him, small animals fled into the tree line, monkeys leaping from branch to branch, warthogs tearing through the underbrush, birds blasting from the canopy in frantic, silent clouds. Something beneath the riverbed was rising. A long plume of opaque silt spiraled upward from the growing crack, like smoke rising underwater. Thick, dark, ancient silt, older than the crocodile, older than the humans, older than the river itself, lifting in slow, heavy coils. Haru recognized this scent. Not personally, instinctively. Deep earth. Earth unbothered by sunlight for ages. Earth that carried pressure in its breath. Haru backed up further. The large vessel shuddered violently as the water beneath it shifted. A tall antenna on its deck bent, then snapped cleanly. The hull tipped sideways, water rushing silently over its edge. One of the humans pointed at something emerging beneath the crack. Haru saw it too. Not an object, not machinery, not an animal. A surface. A solid surface rising from the depths, smooth, dark, massive, pushing the river water aside like a mountain emerging from the soil. The riverbed was rising, not cracking, not collapsing, rising. The warm water was simply the first warning. The stillness was the second. This was the third. Haru's tail lashed involuntarily as a section of the river bottom lifted into view. A flat shelf of stone and mud, steaming, veined with fissures glowing faintly orange. A hydrothermal chamber, one that had never been meant to open. Boiling water surged around its edges. The river tried to flow again. But the pressure trapped every movement, flattening every wave instantly. The humans yelled something and sprinted for the deeper jungle. Two of them abandoned equipment entirely. One paused to retrieve a metal case, but another yanked him away, shouting silently through the pressure. Behind them, the large research vessel tilted further, then slid. Slowly, deliberately, as though guided by the rising stone shelf. Haru felt the riverbank shift beneath him. Small cracks formed in the mud, steaming. He turned and crawled higher toward the tree line. Behind him, the river roared, but without sound. The stone shelf rose another meter, now breaching the surface. Water rushed over it in strange sheets, unable to spill naturally, clinging to the hot rock before slipping downward in slow, reluctant flows. The river was becoming two rivers, one above and one rising from below. Haru reached the tree line and turned back one final time. The crack in the riverbed stretched wider, revealing more glowing veins of orange, more steam, more ancient pressure forcing its way upward. He finally understood. The river had not lost its current. It had lost its stability, and whatever lay beneath it was claiming the surface for itself. The current wouldn't move because the river was no longer in control of its own water.